One introduction. RFK, the United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building, for just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove, and International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RFK purple air PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.
Hi, my name is Lily. Andrew gave you the intro to residents against wood smoke emission particulates and their concern for air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. Residents against wood smoke emission particulates, or ROSEP, would like every near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner whose wood smoke enters their yards and sickens the near neighbors to have a purple air PM 2.5 monitor hanging from the eaves of their home to measure the level of PM 2.5 entering their yards. That measurement of air pollution should be used as evidence of unnecessary air pollution, and each indoor residential wood burner should be shut down based on that evidence, one indoor residential wood burner at a time if necessary. The presentation by Andrew ended at 2 minutes 5 seconds. The same presentation by Emma starts at 2 minutes 3 seconds before the end of this podcast. So I am Lily, your timekeeper, and you can start the next podcast at 2 minutes 5 seconds in if you would not like to see the presentation by Andrew a second time. This presentation by me, Lily, ends at 5 minutes in. What you will see in the main content of this ROSEP podcast will be news about air pollution from indoor residential wood burning and how that air pollution is being combated by ordinary people just like you who are unfortunately near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners at this time. There will also be news about unnecessary and highly polluting use of wood as fuel in industrial wood burners and preventable air pollution from wood burning. Wildfires. There will also be news about air pollution from PM 2.5 from gas-powered cars. There will also be news about airborne diseases which are also preventable with vaccines such as COVID-19 and measles and whooping cough, to name just a few. In 2025, residents against wood smoke emission particulates is also concerned with combating the Trump destruction of government funding for programs which protect human health through the Department of Health and Human Services, and Trump destruction of programs which fund the science and medical research plan to protect human health from preventable illnesses. Protecting human health is a patriotic act, and our defense against enemies is weakened if we are not as healthy as we can be. Heat pump rebates are now offered by the federal government, distributed through the eligible United States, are available in 2025 and are the best, cleanest, and now cheapest alternative to indoor residential wood burning if that burning is actually done to purportedly save money. Wind and solar as sources of the electricity that powers heat pumps and electric cars is also cheaper than burning wood. The adverse health effects that are caused by indoor residential wood burning also come at a cost to near neighbors, both in shortening and ending their lives and in actual hospital, clinic, and funeral costs. Instead of being compensated monetarily, near neighbors should instead be able to achieve immediate relief by stopping indoor residential wood burning in their hyper-localized neighborhoods, which relief readings from purple air PM 2.5 monitors used as evidence of air pollution will help them achieve. Welcome to news about hopeful scientific and medical achievements that will also help us achieve the goal of clean air to breathe.
Episode 57DHWWA June 24, 2025 The Race to Save a Family Farm from Canadian Wildfires. In episode 57DHWWA When You Can All Just Die Part 2 RFK Junior replaces science with witchcraft 2 Headlines 3 Inside the Race to Save a Family Farm from Canadian Wildfires 4 I feel like I have been lied to when a measles outbreak hits home from a lone clinic in Texas to an entire school district in North Dakota 5 The Minnesota shootings illuminate the character of the Trump era 6 I study the resistance against the Nazis here as with the US left can learn from it 7 Canada British Columbia Vancouver The BC Wildfire Service says the Pocket Knife Creek wildfire northwest of Fort St. John is now classified as being held and is not expected to grow outside its current size 8 Trump says he wants to fund more trade schools just not these 9 A heat wave leaves Britons looking for ways to stay cool 10 Current heat wave likely to kill almost 600 people in England and Wales 11 A former California utility exec explains why your electricity bills are so high 12 As wildfires increase New Jersey NJ considers the impact on public health 13 What does the big beautiful debate tell us about the politics of the IRA? Main content 1 You Can All Just Die Part 2 RFK Junior replaces science with witchcraft Excerpts edited by RFK for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates A 501c3 nonprofit organization Brian Monk on Facebook June 23, 2025 Dr. Fiona Havers senior advisor on vaccine policy just resigned from the CDC after 13 years because of the anti-science policies implemented by Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Kennedy has called the non-COVID vaccines from Moderna and Pfizer that likely saved millions of lives the deadliest vaccine ever made. He also cancelled a $600 million contract with Moderna to develop a bird flu vaccine because he is buying into the warped nonsense that technology is dangerous. Kennedy is about the least qualified person on earth to be making that nonsense into a credible CDC policy. There are ominous signs that the Kennedy anti-vax witchcraft will become official CDC policy, claiming he was going to restore public trust in the CDC. Kennedy recently fired all 17 doctors on the CDC Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices ASIP who were experts in their fields and immediately replaced them with 8 of his own choosing, most of them vaccine crackpots like himself. On the 25th of June the Kennedy new ASIP will meet after sharing their agenda only a few days in advance in stark contrast to normal practices. This purposely curtailed public opposition comments. The ASIP determines what vaccines get recommended for routine use, which then must be signed on to by the CDC director. Currently there is no CDC director because no one has been approved by Congress, and that fits the Kennedy agenda perfectly. In that vacuum these critical vaccine recommendations are up to him alone without the approval of a non-existent CDC director. You most likely will not be able to get a vaccine at all. Moreover, if that approval does not come, vaccine manufacturers are not likely to even invest in making them, and certainly not there. Updates the recommendation of the ASIP and the CDC director is what insurance companies will use to decide whether they will cover the costs of vaccines. Even if you can afford the cost of the vaccine for yourself and your family, it may very well be thousands of dollars. You most likely will not be able to get it because the pharmacist will not even give it to you because many fewer people will be vaccinated. Everyone you encounter in your everyday life will be sick more often and carrying higher viral loads when they get infected. The fewer people vaccinated, the faster viruses mutate and can leapfrog the vaccine protection of anyone, increasing infections rates even among the vaccinated. It appears likely that a best case scenario may be that vaccines required of children for school entry may be left up to states, and if so, many of the dreaded childhood illnesses that were once eliminated by vaccines will come roaring back. The Health and Human Services Agency HHS has already dropped the recommendation that healthy children and pregnant women get vaccinated for COVID. 32 medical organizations spoke up in opposition to that change, including the most widely respected organizations. Kennedy also nixed a $600 million contract to develop a bird flu vaccine. This anti-vax insanity on the verge of becoming national CDC policy will come back to haunt you in multiple ways. Many vaccines may very well no longer be available to anyone. As Dr. Havers said, people are going to get unnecessarily sick and many will die directly because of the Kennedy idiocy. I have multiple family members who are at higher risk for any communicable disease because of age, pre-existing conditions, and in some cases chemotherapy. Some are already struggling just to stay alive. You likely have people in that precarious situation in your family. This may be their death sentence or yours. Getting vaccinated is more than just protecting your own health, it protects everyone else too. Kennedy is the personification of the MAGA ethos that no one has any obligation to preserve the common good or protect the social fabric that should bind all of us to care for one another. It is more manifestation of normalizing idiocy, selfishness and cruelty. 2 headlines. The New York Times, June 22, 2025. Air pollution from wood burning inside the race to save a family farm from Canadian wildfires. The New York Times. Heatwave from climate change. Midwest cities bake as heatwave blankets the central U.S. The New York Times. Medicine and science. I feel like I had been lied to when a measles outbreak hits home. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts to pay for tax breaks for the rich. An existential threat. Food banks brace for fallout from Trump cuts. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts to pay for tax breaks for the rich. Opinion. Happy birthday money. The New York Times. 2B headlines. The Guardian, June 22, 2025. Assassination of Democrat Minnesota State Senator Melissa Hartman and her husband. The Minnesota shootings illuminate the character of the Trump heir. Sidney Blumenthal. The Guardian. Musk Tesla set to unveil self-driving car service in Austin. Tesla. The Guardian. Trump budget cuts to pay for tax breaks for the rich. I study the resistance against the Nazis. Here is what the US left can learn from it. Luke Berryman. The Guardian. Trump budget cuts to pay for tax breaks for the rich. The line between entertainment and reality is getting fuzzier, but making the distinction is more important than ever. The Guardian. Trump strike on Iran nuclear sites. This friend of ours will soon be an enemy. How Iran became the foe of Israel. Iran. The Guardian. Trump strike on Iran nuclear sites, from shipping to proxies to targeting US bases. The Iran options to strike back are limited. Iran. The Guardian. 2C headlines. Other media, June 22, 2025. Air pollution from wood burning. Canada. Roundup of the latest climate change news to June 22, 2025. Vancouver Sun. Raw Sep View. Trump MAGA Republican talking points based on lies picked up by the Trump MAGA Republican assassin himself. Assassination of Democrat Minnesota State Senator Melissa Hartman and her husband MAGA madman Vance Bolter blames Minnesota Governor Tim Walz for his murderous rampage. Trump strike on Iran nuclear sites. MAGA rivals kickstart race to be president as Trump announces war. 2D headlines. The New York Times, June 21, 2025. Musk opinion. The waste Musk created. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts to pay for tax breaks for the rich. Opinion. Trump is vulnerable. Democrats still need a strategy. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts to pay for tax breaks for the rich. Trump says he wants to fund more trade schools, just the not these. The New York Times. United Kingdom heatwave. From climate change. UK heatwave leaves Britons looking for ways to stay cool. The New York Times. 2E headlines. The Guardian, June 21, 2025. Internet users advised to change passwords after 16 million logins exposed. Cybercrime. The Guardian. Pakistan to nominate Donald Trump for Nobel Peace Prize. Pakistan. The Guardian. United Kingdom heatwave from climate change. Current heatwave likely to kill almost 600 people in England and Wales. Extreme heat. The Guardian. 2F headlines. Other media, June 21, 2025. Air pollution from wood burning. Trump budget cuts to pay for tax breaks for the rich. A former California utility exec explains why your electricity bills are so high. Inside Climate News. Air pollution from wood burning as wildfires increase. NJ considers the impact on public health. Inside Climate News. Air pollution from wood burning. Trump budget cuts to pay for tax breaks for the rich. Congress begins repeal of clean energy tax credits with sledgehammer approach. Inside Climate News. Air pollution from wood burning saved from the SAW conservation deal spares 8,000 acres of sensitive land in Alabama from becoming a wood pellet mill. Inside Climate News. Canada. In the Silicon Valley of mining, speculators of Canada power a hunt for minerals from Alaska. Inside Climate News. Pakistan. Air pollution from wood burning. Heatwave from climate change. Two suns, one city. The Karachi, Pakistan. Dueling realities in a warming world. Trump budget cuts to pay for tax breaks for the rich. What does the big beautiful debate tell us about the politics of the IRA? 3. Inside the race to save a family farm from Canadian wildfires. As Canada endures another heavy wildfire season, a group of resourceful farmers in British Columbia became an ad hoc fire brigade to help a neighbor subsetted by raw sep for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 non-profit organization. The New York Times, June 22, 2025. Smoke was darkening the skies and flames from an out-of-control wildfire ripping through this remote stretch of western Canada the war creeping ominously close to the farm that has been in the Jake Van Angeren family for 70 years. Official evacuation alerts had sounded in Goodloe, an agricultural community near Alberta in northeastern British Columbia, setting off a chain reaction among families who had packed their bags ready to be ordered to leave as wildfires this month swallowed up swaths of land, but not Van Angeren. Instead, he and his neighbors filled up water tanks, unraveled hoses, cleared strips of land of combustible plants to create a firebreak, and then stepped toward the flames. They saved the Van Angeren farm. Volunteers brought a water truck to help fight the fire. The wildfire season in Canada, which generally stretches from April to October and is in full swing in the western part of the country, consuming nearly 9 million acres so far across 4 provinces and forcing thousands of people to make difficult choices, sometimes at short notice. When flames approach, some are told to leave by officials. Disobeying an evacuation order can carry fines of thousands of Canadian dollars as well as jail time. Some leave on their own, fearing for their safety. At least 30,000 people in 2 western provinces, Saskatchewan and Manitoba, have fled in recent weeks, but there are others who choose to stay, including many farmers who do not want to surrender their livelihood to fire. If we would have walked away, I would have lost everything, said Van Angeren, 20, who inherited the 650-acre property from his grandfather, where he mainly raises cattle and grows feed. After his father died 4 years ago, I would not leave till the very bitter end. British Columbia Wildfire Service members later arrived at the Van Angeren property to help manage the spread of the fire. Van Angeren said he feels a deep sense of attachment to his land. He has relatives buried on the farm. Your farm kind of means everything to you, said Van Angeren. It is just the way of life. For I feel like I have been lied to. When a measles outbreak hits home, from a lone clinic in Texas to an entire school district in North Dakota, the virus is upending daily life and revealing a deeper crisis of both effects upsetted by raw SEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, June 22, 2025. He was a chiropractor by training, but in a remote part of West Texas with limited medical care, a man had become a first stop for whatever hurt for more than a decade. A 48-year-old chiropractor had seen 20 patients each day at his small clinic located between a church and a gas station in Brownfield, population 8,500. He treated what he could, referred others to physicians, and prayed over the rest. It was not until early this spring that he started to notice something unfamiliar coming through the door: aches that lingered, fevers that would not break, discolored patches of skin that did not make sense. At first he blamed it on a bad flu season, but the symptoms stuck around and then multiplied. By late March, a third of his patients were telling him about relatives who could not breathe, and then the man started coughing too. His wife had recently tested positive for COVID, but her symptoms eased as his intensified. He went to a doctor at the beginning of April for a viral panel, but every result came back negative. The doctor decided to test for the remote possibility of measles, since there was a large outbreak spreading through a Mennonite community 40 miles away, but the chiropractor was vaccinated. In North Dakota, I had a student coughing all over my office. Another nurse said, I have a 2-year-old at home who cannot be fully vaccinated yet. I was kind of spiraling. The nurse apologized and checked a message on her phone: 3 more potential cases. She said this is a half hour ago. She looked at her notes and added up the latest case numbers. Just a few weeks earlier she had been reading about the first deaths and a surge of hospitalizations in West Texas, a crisis that seemed to belong to a different era and a place far away. The other nurses looked at her, awaiting direction. It is still spreading, the nurse said. I am starting to think this thing has come back to stay. 5. The Minnesota shootings illuminate the character of the Trump era. The attacks on lawmakers and a callous reaction of a U.S. Senator tell a dark tale of modern America. Excerpts edited by raw SEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian, June 21, 2025. In the early morning of 14th of June, according to authorities, Vance Luther Bolter, disguised as a police officer and wearing body armor and a face mask, drove his black Ford Explorer SUV equipped with flashing lights to the home of the Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman. There he shot Hoffman 9 times, critically wounding him, and shot his wife 8 times. As relatives say, she threw her body over her daughter to shield her. He next drove to the home of the former House Speaker Melissa Hortman, forced his way in and killed her and her husband. Officials say the police arrived and Bolter fled, abandoning his car in it. They allegedly discovered a kill list of dozens of federal and state Democratic officials, mostly from Minnesota but also prominent Democrats Democrats in other Midwestern states on the lam. Bolter sent a text message to his family. Dad went to war last night. As soon as the earliest reports of the murders were published with the sketchy information that Bolter had been appointed by Minnesota Governor Tim Walz to one of many state boards on which there are currently more than 342 vacancies, the right-wing swarm began spreading the falsehood that he was the hitman for Walz. Mike Cernovich, a notorious conspiracy monger with a large following on X, tweeted, "Did Tim Walz have her executed to send a message?" Posts on X by a U.S. senator after the Minnesota shootings were horrific and predictable. Elon Musk jumped in, writing on X, "The far left is murderously violent." Within hours, Mike Lee, a Republican senator for Utah, used the platform of his office to push the disinformation over eerie nighttime photos of Bolter in his mask and police outfit standing at the Hortman door seconds before he opened fire. Lee tweeted, "First before 10 a.m. on June 15, this is what happens when Marxists do not get their way." Shortly after 10 a.m. he tweeted, "Nightmare on Waltz Street," misspelling the Tim Walz name. Lee expressed no sympathy or shock over the assassinations. He assumed the distance of the online tormentor gave him license. Like the mask wearer, both were disinhibited by their contrived personas. Anything goes. Lee was doing more than blaming Waltz for carrying out a bloody vendetta that conspiracy theorists had conjured. Lee created a cartoon. The killer was enlisted by the evil liberal governor to rub out someone who was in reality one of his closest allies. Like Bolter, Lee felt a compulsion to push himself in. The clamor of the far right preempted the emergence of the facts for Lee and served as his incitement. But of course, Lee is a learned man who knew that what he was doing was malicious. The facts were always irrelevant. He trivialized a tragedy in order to implicate Waltz as the villain, commissioning the hit. The Lee tone was one of mocking derision to belittle and distort the killer. Waltz and the victims were all tiny, dehumanized figures he arranged to illustrate his tweets. His manipulation was more than a maneuver, it was a revelation of the Lee mentality and political imagination he believed would be embraced to his advantage. His depraved humor was designed to cement fellow feeling between the jokester and his intended audience. He was playing to the gallery that he knew how to own. The libs he would gain approval and acceptance in a hothouse in which he operates. He thought his mindless cruelty passed as wit. Soon enough it was reported that Bolter was not a Marxist, or for that matter a hitman hired by Marxists. The Minneapolis Star-Tribune reported that Waltz did not know him and Waltz was on his kill list. Bolter was reportedly a registered Republican who attended Trump rallies. Mike Lee is also a man in a mask. He altered his identity, discarding the veneer of a statesman for the MAGA mask. Both Bolter and Lee profess to be men of faith, draping themselves in the authority of the law, as one allegedly committed murder and the other hooted at it. They have both posed as heroic avengers and truth-tellers as they target victims while speaking of God, the law, and a higher calling. They worship at the shrine of Trump. The alleged assassin and the character assassin embody parallel lives that have intersected at the tragedy. Under the influence of Trump, one appeared susceptible to the latest conspiracy theories. The other knows these are lies but amplifies them anyway for personal aggrandizement to win the approval of the mob and its boss. One is a true believer, the other is a cynical opportunist. One is a loser. In the Trump parlance, when he was 17, the young man became a born-again Christian, living in a tent in the local park and shouting sermons to passers-by. 6. I study the resistance against the Nazis. Here is what the U.S. left can learn from it. Effective opposition calls for a laser focus on change, no matter how small. We should consider the examples of these activists accepted by ROSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization, The Guardian, June 22, 2025. Around the end of 2022, I had an idea for a book about the history of resistance to Nazism. I wanted to show that Nazism has faced nonconformity, refusal and protest ever since it was born in 1920. When I began my research, Trump had just announced his candidacy for the Republican ticket in 2024. When I gave the manuscript to the publisher a little over 2 years later, he was president-elect. His comeback, the darker version of MAGA that came with him, and the Democratic Party collapse gave fresh relevance to the stories of resistance to far-right extremism that I was finding. We have put up lawn signs and trolled Trump and his supporters both online and off, but while such acts may get attention, their capacity to create change is less certain. This can even be true for mass protests in the era of social media and the 24-hour news cycle. Protests can risk becoming a spectacle, and when the government is given a chance to portray them as violent, their effectiveness is extinguished. The resistors that I researched, by contrast, were laser focused on creating change, whether they were satirists drawing anti-Nazi cartoons in 1920s Germany or former neo-Nazis becoming peace advocates in the 21st century U.S. They sought to improve life for themselves and others in the here and now in any way that they could, no matter how small. The German activist Tammy Bonhoeffer is a powerful example. She built a support group for the Holocaust survivors who testified in the 1960s Frankfurt Auschwitz trials, where Nazis were tried for their roles at the death camp. In doing so, Bonhoeffer resisted the desires of Nazis for both their crimes and their victims to be forgotten. Her group, most of them homemakers, ultimately helped nearly 200 people as they took the stand. They inspired similar groups to form around other war crimes trials in Germany too, but they did not advertise. They did not have a slogan or an outfit or a flag. They did not even bother to give their group a name. Their first and only concern was to clear a path toward justice for at least some of the victims of the Nazis. For Bonhoeffer, resistance was not about getting attention, it was about creating change. A sense of shared humanity among the lower level British intelligence officials helped them, persuaded members of the German public to help them smoke out Nazi war criminals after 1945. Orleans base, the Black American soldier drew on his own experiences of segregation to deepen his understanding of the suffering of the Jewish people he liberated from Buchenwald. Effective resistance to the far right is about creating a better future for everyone. What is giving me hope now? Teachers and librarians are championing the written word as a tool of resistance. The arts can connect us to our own humanity and to the humanity in others. Supporting your local art museum, attending a concert, or joining a book club should all be cause for hope, because in a divided partisan society such acts constitute resistance. 7 Canada, British Columbia, Vancouver. The BC Wildfire Service says the Pocket Knife Creek wildfire northwest of Fort St. John is now classified as being held and is not expected to grow outside its current size. Exec said it by RFK for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Vancouver News, June 22, 2025. The service says about 100 millimeters of rain in recent days has hampered the growth of the fire, and more wet weather is in the forecast this week. The wildfire merged with another fire earlier this month, becoming the largest in the province at more than 1,500 square kilometers. The remaining evacuation alerts related to the wildfire were rescinded Monday, but the Peace River Regional District said new orders or alerts may be issued if the situation changes. To the south, the Caribou Regional District issued an evacuation alert for properties near a wildfire that is burning out of control in the central interior. The Martin Lake fire was discovered Sunday and is burning about 220 kilometers west of Williams Lake. An evacuation order has been issued for 2 properties near a wildfire in Squamish. The BC Wildfire Service has classified the Dryden Creek wildfire as being held and said it expects the fire to remain within its current boundaries. However, the District of Squamish issued an evacuation order for 2 properties located east of the fire Monday afternoon because of the risk posed by trees and rockfall. An evacuation alert remains in place for 4000 Highway 99 and properties in the 1700 block Depot Road. An alert issued last week for properties on Tantalus Road north of Dowa Drive in the Skyridge subdivision was rescinded Sunday. More than 40 million people in the U.S. were under heat alerts Friday, according to the National Weather Service. Temperatures in the Midwest are expected to crest well into the 30s. See this weekend, triple-digit highs could pop up in New York, Philadelphia, Washington and Denver. The peak will likely hit the East Coast early next week. Meanwhile, British health officials are also issuing heat warnings for the UK, an increasingly hot planet due largely to burning fossil fuels such as coal, oil and natural gas means areas already hot are getting worse. 8 Trump says he wants to fund more trade schools, just not these. The Job Corps program has long been the subject of debate, but it is now also a point of contention in the Trump efforts to pull back the social safety net. Exec said it by RFK for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, June 21, 2025. Late last month, the Labor Department sent a letter to dozens of Job Corps centers across the country. Its message was blunt: you are hereby notified that the subject contract is being terminated completely. The department wrote, you shall begin immediately all work necessary to provide a safe, orderly and prompt shutdown of center operations. The instructions threw into jeopardy the future of Job Corps. Great Society Year, a job training program designed to help low-income young people enter the workforce. Many of the Job Corps students do not have a high school degree or are homeless. Most live free of charge in dorms on Job Corps campuses and learn trades in construction, automotive repair, healthcare and the like. Its defenders claim it offers a lifeline to disadvantaged youth. Some 25,000 are served at the 99 centers told to shut down, and provides an on-ramp to employment, but the Labor Department published a transparency report in April that showed something else: low graduation rates and swelling costs. Using those shortcomings as justification, it ordered a pause in operations at the 99 Job Corps centers that are operated by outside contractors. 9. A heat wave leaves Britons looking for ways to stay cool as high temperatures have become more common in recent years. Some people are adjusting, including by investing in air conditioners. Exec, edited by RFK for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, June 21, 2025. A man walking his dog described his strategy for keeping cool after days of comparatively sizzling London weather. He keeps his windows shut and curtains drawn, and at night he opens the windows to let the cool air in. He has been seriously looking into fitting his home with air conditioning, a relative rarity in Britain. People would not have thought about air conditioning 5 years or so ago, as the United States sweats through its own run of high heat. Temperatures in Britain have been above the seasonal average for days. The country was forecast to officially tip into the first heat wave of the year on Saturday, with a high of 34 degrees Celsius or about 93 degrees Fahrenheit, according to the Met Office. The average high for June is around 64 Fahrenheit, and many homes are designed to retain heat. In recent days, some British schools have allowed children to wear their own clothes rather than school uniforms, or at least to leave the ties and blazers at home. People who would normally work from home went to the office for the air conditioning. From 2019 to 2024, some stores had seen a 4,000% increase in the sale of fans and air conditioning units. You would be amazed how many orders we get between 1 am and 3 am from customers who cannot sleep because of the heat. The UK Health Security Agency issued an amber level heat health alert across the whole of England through Monday, meaning that significant effects were likely across health and social care services, including a rise in deaths. Care UK, which operates 165 elder care homes across the country, said it would focus on keeping residents hydrated with icy treats and especially formulated tea. It can be tricky for those caring for a loved one to ensure they drink enough. In London, the office of the mayor has designated hundreds of cool spaces, public spaces offering shelter from the sun. At one of them, the St. Luke's Community Centre in the Islington area of North London, a man watched the Royal Ascot horse racing event on television while a portable fan blasted cool air onto his face across the room. Another fan word. 10. Current heat wave likely to kill almost 600 people in England and Wales. Surge in deaths would not be occurring without human-caused global heating, scientists say. Exec, edited by RFK for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian, June 21, 2025. Almost 600 people are expected to die early in the heat wave roasting England and Wales. A rapid analysis has found the surge in deaths would not be occurring without human-caused global heating, the scientists said. With temperatures boosted by 2°C-4°C by the pollution from fossil fuels, premature deaths will occur across the two countries, but the highest mortality rates are expected in London and the West Midlands. Most of the deaths, 85%, will be people over 65 years old who are more vulnerable to the extreme heat. People in inner city homes are also at high risk. More than 10,000 people died before their time in summer heat waves between 2020 and 2024. According to the UK Health Security Agency (UKSA), the UK government preparations to protect people from the escalating impacts of the climate crisis were condemned as inadequate, piecemeal and disjointed by official advisors in April. The 32°C heat that will be endured by people in the southeast of England on Saturday will have been made 100 times more likely by the climate crisis, scientists said on Friday. Heat waves are silent killers. People who lose their lives in them typically have pre-existing health conditions and rarely have heat listed as a contributing cause of death, said a doctor at Imperial College London who is part of the team that estimated the number of deaths. This real-time analysis reveals the hidden toll of heat waves, and we want it to help raise the alarm, he said. Another doctor and professor at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine (LSHTM) and also part of the analysis team, said increases of just a degree or two can be the difference between life and death. 11. A former California utility exec explains why your electricity bills are so high. The former industry insider and amateur wrestler Mark Ellis is exposing the little-known factors that raise bills and threaten the energy transition. People across the country are starting to listen. Exec edited by RFK for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization inside Climate News, June 15, 2025. Mark Ellis, a former Sampra Corp executive who has made an unusual shift and become a consumer advocate in San Diego, California, on a walk near his house with views of the ocean. Mark Ellis speaks with urgency about how the utility business, the industry that long employed him, is harming the public with unsustainable rate increases. He keeps coming back to the same point: the complexity of utility regulation is obscuring a transfer of wealth from the general public to shareholders on a vast scale. I do not like bullies, he said. I feel like there is a lot of bullying going on with utilities. People need to stand up to the bully. U.S. households have seen their electricity prices increase by an average of 25% from 2020 to 2024, which exceeds the rate of inflation according to the Energy Information Administration. When electricity is unaffordable, the transition away from fossil fuels becomes expensive to the point that it stretches feasibility. Ideas such as electrifying home heating and using electricity to power vehicles make less sense in purely financial terms. Ellis, 55, is not saying the increases should be zero. He is saying that the growth has been supercharged by the failure of regulators who have allowed utilities to earn a guaranteed profit that is larger than he believes is appropriate. If a utility has used equity to pay, say, $10 billion to finance assets that it is currently using, including new assets and ones that may go back decades, it can charge customers each year for a percentage of this value. This percentage set by state regulators is the return on equity, one of the most important numbers in utility finance. If regulators authorize a return on equity of 10%, which is about the national average, the resulting charge for 1 year is $1 billion. This is the profit for the utility. It is not transparent to ratepayers. There is no line item on bills for profit. It is baked into the underlying charges. A casual observer may surmise that a 10% return on equity is about 10% of the bills of a household, but it does not work that way. The actual amount varies based on the value of the assets of a utility. Most of the time, profit is 15% to 20% of the bill. The research and advocacy group RMI has found that profit is 16.7% of a typical utility bill. The $1 billion in profit in his example is grossly excessive. Ellis believes if utilities and the regulators were following basic regulatory principles, the profit would be more like $600 million, he said. 12. As wildfires increase, New Jersey NJ considers the impact on public health. Researchers are trying to get a handle on the impacts of wildfires like those in the Pine Barrens, Canada and elsewhere. Excerpts edited by RFK for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, June 19, 2025. As wildfire smoke increases, bad air days. Are government agencies doing enough? The Jones Road fire in New Jersey scorched 15,300 acres for nearly 3 weeks this spring. Its sickly orange haze vanished hours after the blaze was doused, but a stench from the blackened landscape, including parts of the Pine Barrens, lingered for days. New Jersey public health experts now are trying to understand what, if any, health risks are hidden in the smoke from wildfires. Last week they found a fresh motivation. Fire broke out Friday in Wharton State Forest, prompting evacuations in southern New Jersey within days. 6,400 acres had burned. The blaze was reported 90% contained as of Wednesday, according to New Jersey Fire Service social media posts. The Public Information Office for the Ocean County Health Department said information about potential related hospitalizations from the Jones Road fire, named for a street where it was first sighted, are not yet available. That would require some cross-coordination between emergency rooms across the state, he said, which does not routinely happen. Air pollution levels near the Jones Road fire, which burned in April, were recorded at more than 10 times the limit recommended by the World Health Organization, according to the U.S. Air Quality Index. Experts do not know how these fires are affecting long-term health, and it could take some time to find out. The New Jersey Department of Health Environmental and Occupational Health Surveillance Program recently published a 15-page report that examines medical needs from air pollution that drifted from wildfires in Canada in 2023. A record number of wildfires charred 18 million acres from March to June and 8 firefighters died, but most important for New Jersey health authorities, visible smoke billowed over the border and across the northeast United States for days, and the wildfire smoke event caused the air quality index AQI to reach unhealthy and very unhealthy levels across the state. The state study released in March collated billing data and diagnosis codes from Jersey hospitals, including emergency visits and inpatient care. Researchers found asthma-related emergency visits increased significantly on June 7. The number was 112% higher than the daily average of asthma patients who sought care 2 weeks before. Skies filled with the smoke from Canada. As of June 5, NOAA said 1746 fires have erupted in Canada this year, consuming about 10,000 square miles, or an area larger than Vermont and New Jersey. Firefighters too have found that wildfires were no longer just a summer risk. The Jones Road fire broke out days after New Jersey Forest Fire Service officials had warned they had delayed prescribed burns routine for clearing brush because of an unusually dry spring. A lack of rain and snow for some months had left the region and the expansive Pine Barrens woodlands particularly vulnerable. The county health department quickly issued public health advisories as the fire, apparently traced to a bonfire that had not been fully extinguished, spread and endangered main traffic arteries, including the Garden State Parkway. Authorities warned of deteriorating air quality. 13. What does the big beautiful debate tell us about the politics of the IRA? Exec edited by RFK for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization inside Climate News. May 14, 2025. Republicans on the House Ways and Means Committee voted to repeal clean energy incentives early Wednesday after an all-night session marking up legislation they titled One Big Beautiful Bill. The $4.9 trillion package would extend the tax cuts passed in the Trump first term and add a few more, such as eliminating taxes on chips, a portion of the funds to pay for the bill, about 11%, according to the Joint Committee on Taxation. Tally would come from eradicating tax credits passed in the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 that were meant to spur a U.S. transition to cleaner energy. Billions of dollars of private investment have poured into hundreds of new electric vehicle and battery plants and other clean energy projects in the wake of the passage of the IRA, with much of the boom occurring in Republican-led states. As the Biden climate team left the White House, they expressed faith that this bipartisan impact would give the IRA durability, even though it had passed Congress with solely Democratic votes. The House Ways and Means Committee decisively put this notion to rest with its 389-page draft. Make no mistake, this bill takes a sledgehammer approach. A coalition of environmental groups wrote in a letter to committee leaders. The legislation guts clean energy production in America, raises costs for families, worsens air pollution, and eliminates hundreds of thousands of good-paying manufacturing jobs, all to fund massive tax breaks for billionaires. The outnumbered Democrats on the committee focused their fight on the other impacts of the legislation, like its massive cuts to Medicaid and food assistance, with little or no mention of the energy tax credits. The folks most influential at this moment are the CEOs of companies in various districts that have projects that are underway or about to be underway, and the workers in these districts, whether it is in Georgia or Arizona or New York or anywhere else. It is trying to make clear to their members of Congress that there is a lot on the line here. The automotive sector in particular has much to lose after investing billions of dollars in a transition to EVs. The politics change very quickly and automakers change very slowly. It is really difficult for them to make adjustments when they are working on a 7 to 10 year design cycle. But the main lobbying group of the automakers, the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, has been silent so far on the budget reconciliation bill, even after speaking out on other big policy changes in recent weeks, voicing support for rollback of the greenhouse gas emissions regulations of California and opposition to the Trump tariffs. General Motors, Ford, Stellantis and other big car makers are members of one of the biggest business lobbying groups in America, the National Association of Manufacturers (NAM), which praised the House Ways and Means bill as a vital step forward in securing a competitive tax environment that empowers manufacturers to create jobs, invest, grow and compete. NAM said the Trump 2017 tax cut bill, which lowered the top corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%, was rocket fuel for manufacturers, and the new provisions get the sector closer to an effective 15% tax rate. The advocacy group Americans for Prosperity, heavily financed by the petrochemical monolith Koch Industries, is running advertisements on TV in Washington declaring the decision on the budget reconciliation bill boils down to a simple equation: lowering tax bills for hard-working families. Good reckless spending on green energy fantasies? Not good. The ad says eliminating the Biden Green New Deal helps pay for the Trump tax cuts. The word helps is doing heavy lifting in the ad, given that the calculation of the Joint Committee on Taxation is that eliminating the energy tax credit saves about $559 billion, a small fraction of the $4.9 trillion cost of the tax cut package. And if the only motivation for repeal of the energy tax credits were to pay for the Trump tax cuts, it does not explain why the House Ways and Means Republicans took other steps that have no revenue impact, like eliminating a provision in the IRA that allowed for transferability of tax credits, which widened the potential pool of investors for clean energy projects. It will be challenging to make the case for renewable energy in a GOP-led Congress when the oil and gas industry, one of the biggest contributors to political campaigns, favored Republicans with 87% of its $75 million in donations in the 2025 election cycle. To combat that advantage, clean energy advocates on Capitol Hill are trying to make the business case for the clean energy incentives instead of focusing on their most profound potential: cutting greenhouse gas emissions from the economy of America to buffer Americans from the worst impacts of global warming. Eliminating incentives could have stark emissions consequences. Repeal of all of the IRA tax credits, when combined with the Trump-planned rollback of regulations like power plant and vehicle emissions standards, would bring cutting air pollution to a near standstill. In the long run, the industry is shifting toward EVs. No matter what politicians do, this just slows the American companies down and potentially makes them less competitive.
Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. Saying the quiet part out loud. Roar. Hi, I am Tiger. Our human asked us to get up from our naps and start Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. She gave us a list of internet allies, which we will post for her here.
Hi, I am Leone. It is better for your mental fitness to go to these websites than to go to bro sites for advice. Substack letters from an American Heather Cox Richardson. Substack your local epidemiologist. The Midas Touch. The Guardian. The New York Times.
One introduction. Rosette view. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree. But it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning, replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom. The Eco-Design Wood Stove and International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. Rosette view. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.